When did it start feeling harder to focus even on things you actually care about? When did boredom stop feeling neutral and start feeling unbearable? Now, why do tasks that require patience now feel exhausting instead of normal? And how do we get to a place where hard automatically feels like not worth it? You have now joined the Education Evolution. You're listening to Hall Pass to the Real World. This is a podcast for the thinkers, the doers, and everyone who knows the most important lessons aren't always taught in school. I'm your host, Mr. Jihad, and before we jump into today's episode, Happy New Year! So we're fresh off the holidays, the rest, the chaos, the reflection, so what are we actually about to be doing this year? And we're officially kicking off our first Hall Pass episode of the year. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We're really glad that you're here. And if you've been rocking with us for a while, thank you for continuing to show up and grow with this community. And so if this show helps you think differently or even just ask better questions or connect education to real life in a meaningful way, subscribing is one of the easiest ways to support the conversation and help it reach more people. All right, let's jump into it. Today, we're talking about a shift that has reached everyone, no matter where you work, where you live, where you learn. I know you have felt it. People are struggling to stay engaged with long-form tasks. When I heard that word or that phrase, I was like, what is it? What you trying to say, Jihad? Long-form tasks just basically means anything where you don't get instant feedback or a quick win. I'm going to tell you more about what this looks like in practice in a second. But let's start with this. There's less patience for confusion, repetition, slow progress. That multi-step thinking, and it feels heavier than it used to. And here's what I want to ground this in to even begin talking about what long-form tasks are. The national assessments, like National Assessment of Educational Progress, show declines in reading and math performance, which I know we all know, especially in skills tied to comprehension, reasoning, and problem solving. What stands out isn't these scores, it's the struggle with focus and stamina. And that's an important distinction because this isn't about the fact that we're not getting smarter and the intelligence is declining. It's about how we are training and how we are being taught to train. What I want you to think about here is when something feels mentally challenging for you, do you sit with it or do you immediately look for some type of faster way out? Here's the part that we don't always like to admit. This isn't just showing up with students, y'all. According to the international data from organizations like the OECD, which stands for Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, they show that adults are also reading less deeply over time. And we're consuming more information, but engaging with it more shallowly. So that looks like instead of reading an article from start to finish, we just go ahead and skimming that thing. Jumping ahead instead of staying with the complexity, looking at summaries instead of trying to get the full context. Depth requires practice, y'all. And when we don't practice it, it's getting weaker. I'm curious, when was the last time that you read something all the way through without checking your phone? Yeah, I'm the same way, so don't feel bad. We also live in a world where thinking is constantly outsourced. Directions, go ahead and pull up that Apple Maps, Google Maps, Waze. Memory, let me go ahead and write this down in my notes or actually type that down in my notes. Spelling, we got spell check, we got Grammarly. In writing, we got our best friend ChatGPT. And truth be told, research summarized by the Pew Research Center shows that people are increasingly relying on technology to perform basic cognitive tasks that help us with our memory, navigation, and recall. And let me be crystal clear, that's not inherently bad. But as you know with medication, there's always some type of side effects. So here's the trade-off. If you don't practice a skill, guess what? It doesn't get stronger. So the convenience is removing the friction, and that workaround is weakening that muscle and hurting your cognitive endurance. And so you're probably like, Jihad, how did we get to today? Like, what made you want to talk about this and discipline and all that good stuff? And guess what? It was from a long-form task. I was watching Cardi B and Jay Shetty speak.
Please don't be a bum. Please don't be lazy. Some people have the look, the intelligence, the talent. Some people really have that. But they don't go nowhere because they're lazy. Don't be lazy. Don't just be, oh, your parents are this and that. No, be your own person. Be your own human. Be something. Be something. Be something that you could be proud of.
It was in a clip. she wasn't talking about discipline as punishment. She wasn't talking about yelling or control or even fear. She was talking about using discipline as a space of preparation, preparing your kids or preparing yourself for a world that doesn't always move fast, preparing them to sit with the discomfort that they feel, to do the things that aren't instantly rewarded, but are necessary. And what really hit me is that she was clear. Discipline isn't about being harsh. It's about being intentional, doing the thing even when you're tired, practicing even when it's boring, instilling habits early that your kids and honestly, you will appreciate later. The idea feels almost countercultural right now because we're living in a system that treats discomfort like it's some type of design flaw. So if it's slow, let's skip it. If it's hard, go ahead and avoid it. And if it's boring, replace it. But growth don't work like that. And what Cardi was really naming is discipline isn't about control. It's about building the capacity within yourself, the capacity to wait, to finish, to sit with confusion, to follow through when there's nobody who's cheering you on. And that's where this connects to a lot of us right now, because many of us were raised with a certain code, even if we didn't call it that. It was discipline. For a lot of us, the discipline showed up in everyday rules that weren't up for debate. We didn't get to spend the night at people's houses like that. We didn't get to tell our parents that what we were about to do. We had to ask. We didn't get to say, huh, when they called us. We had to say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, all those things. We didn't talk to adults like they were our friends. We didn't talk back. We wasn't going into our houses and slamming doors of the house that we didn't pay no rent at. We didn't ask why when the answer was no. And we definitely didn't explain what somebody else's parents let them do. So let me be crystal clear. Structure without explanation can create fear instead of growth. Perfection was never the point. Control was never the goal. The point was capacity. That kind of structure, for better or worse, trained many of us to tolerate that discomfort. Learning how to pause, learning to wait, learning to respect boundaries, to follow through even when we didn't feel like it. And that's what matters. Because this conversation isn't just about parenting. It applies to how we learn on a daily basis, how we work on a daily basis, how we take care of our health, how we aim to be more creative in life, how we treat one another in the relationships that we have with friends or partners. Anywhere growth is being delayed, discipline matters. Not as a form of punishment, not as pressure, but as preparation for young people as well as ourselves. So I am eager to know, when in your life have you mistaken discomfort for something being wrong instead of something being formed? This is where thinking really gets impacted. According to the American Psychological Association, they noted that declining frustration tolerance means that people are disengaging faster when tasks feel difficult, slow, or uncomfortable. Difficulty becomes, this isn't for me. Feedback feels a lot more personal, and the boredom feels pointless. And over time, that weakens that cognitive endurance. It weakens critical thinking, because critical thinking requires patience. Critical thinking is uncertain. It is important for us to stay with questions longer than we want to. All right, y'all. I know y'all have hit you with a lot. Let's take it back. We didn't get worse at thinking. We stopped training endurance, that brain muscle. We optimized life for speed and lost depth. Friction isn't failure, and struggle isn't a sign that something is miraculously broken. A frictionless life produces fragile thinkers, and discipline, real discipline, it's not about the misery. It's about giving yourself options later. So the real question isn't whether attention spans are declining. The real question is this: what kind of thinking does our environment train? And what does it quietly erase? And before we close, I have to leave you with something that is practical. Not some type of challenge, not some type of resolution, just a small little thing that you can do. This week, choose one thing that feels a little uncomfortable because it's slow or requires focus, and stay with it longer than you normally would. That might look like reading an article from start to finish without jumping ahead or pulling out that phone. It even could be staying consistent on Duolingo all week, even when the lessons feel repetitive. Or it could even be practicing deliberate stillness, sitting idle for a few minutes without any type of music, scrolling, or multitasking. You're not proving anything. You're just fixing yourself, just trying to rebuild that endurance, because discipline isn't about being hard on yourself. It's about giving your future self more options. If this episode made you pause or rethink something, that's the work. That means I did my job. If you're watching on YouTube, drop your thoughts in the comments. What part of this hit, or where did you feel resistance? And Instagram, Keep the conversation going underneath our latest posts. Tell us where you landed. And lastly, if you haven't already, please make sure that you're subscribed so that you can help us move closer to our goal of 500 subscribers. It's really 500 this time, y'all, I promise. And if you know someone who's been feeling mentally stretched, distracted, or stuck, send this episode to them. Sometimes hearing the right question at the right time is all it takes to unlock something. With that, I'm wishing you a productive, grounded, and curious week ahead. Deuces.